Do you aspire to be the next distinction student in your class? If you don't, then just close the video. But if you do, you need to make sure your research is worthy of a distinction. The first thing you need to know is data types. There are many different data types, but we'll only cover two, quantitative and qualitative. Quantitative data is data that can be represented or measured in a numerical form. It gives the exact amount of something and is useful for making graphs and charts for the information. An example would be the sales of the latest iPhone. Qualitative data is data that gives you a response based off of people's thoughts and opinions. Because it is hard to measure thoughts and opinions, we cannot assume this is quantitative data. Qualitative data can be found via focus groups or interviews. An example would be what do people like or why do they like them. Primary research is essentially research you conduct yourself. It could be research on a particular product or the audience of the product. There are many ways to find data for primary research. It could include questionnaires and surveys, focus groups, and interviews. Questionnaires and surveys are one of the easier and efficient ways of collecting quantitative data. It is used mainly by big corporations to gather data that can be used to create graphs and charts. The reason why many people like to use surveys and questionnaires is that it can be sent to many people, lots of data can be acquired in a short amount of time, as well as the fact that conducting surveys are actually cheaper than a focus group. Here's an example of a good questionnaire. First, it needs to start off with a filter question. A filter question filters out the people who can't answer other questions in the questionnaire. Secondly, the questionnaire needs to be short, maximum of 10 questions and all on one page. Don't ask open questions. Open questions are those which require more thought and more than just a simple one-worded answer. An example would be, why do you like to eat eggs? Thirdly, make sure the questionnaire is presented well, perhaps on a professional level. Finally, make sure you send it to people within your target audience range. Avoid people who are the same gender or same ethnicity or same something. You also want to try to avoid leading questions. For example, is China a great country? You don't really want an obvious answer. Questionnaires and surveys are easy and efficient ways of collecting quantitative data. They cost less than a focus group, but you won't know if the respondent is answering truthfully. Also, the answers won't be very in-depth. Focus groups are one of the many ways to collect qualitative data. You get a bunch of people to sit around a table and basically ask them questions. In your focus group, you should ask open questions. For example, do you like to eat eggs? If so, why? Or why do you like to listen to depressive black metal? Your goal is to try to get the participants to answer with an opinion-based response. Make sure the conversation is alive. You don't want the participants to be bored, otherwise your answers will be very sloppy. Make sure you get someone to record the focus group as evidence and for future reference. Having a notepad open and writing down notes of what the participants are saying will not give you a very accurate response. Finally, you want to keep it short. Make sure the focus group does not exceed over 10 minutes or so. If it gets too lengthy, the participants will become very unwilling with their answers and you won't get the data you need. Focus groups are a good way of collecting qualitative data. You get to be up close with the target audience and therefore get to ask questions with more depth. But focus groups might cost a bit of money depending on who you're interviewing. And whatever the respondents say, you could quote them in the future. For example, Jim says that the best shoe brand is Nike. You also have to bear in mind that a focus group could be boring if not done well, and it also takes time. Secondary research is finding research that was already conducted by someone else. You might research about an existing idea, or maybe how that idea was created and how it became to be successful. You should also research the specific audience related to your product. For example, the demographics or psychographics on teenagers who buy sneakers. There are many ways to conduct secondary research. You could choose to do a general search or an academic search, or maybe you could also read a book. A general search is basically a search on your search engine, whether it may be Google Chrome, Firefox, or even Internet Explorer. A general search is efficient and accessible, alongside the fact that it's free and you get many responses. General searches are mostly conducted by lazy people or people who don't have access to websites such as EBSCO or Explorer, which are academic search engines. If you search top 5 scariest movies on your search engine, you'll probably end up with a BuzzFeed article talking about the top 5 scariest movies in their opinion. Most of these websites specialize in trivia and gossip. They don't provide useful information. For example, if 100 people watched The Nun, 25% of the people might think it was good, 25% of the people thought it was bad, and 50% just don't have an opinion. The people who write the articles are probably the people who thought it was either good or bad. The other 50% just don't really care. You should also try to avoid writers who write on gossipy websites. But all this doesn't mean you can't use the information gained on these websites. It just means you shouldn't take them into consideration. A general search is free and very accessible. You can get a lot of answers, but because of this, there are many unspecified sources and that can lead to a wide variety of false information. You also have to keep in mind that everyone can write on the internet. Academic searches are searches on an academic database. An example of this would be Explorer or EBSCO. These academic databases are really useful for serious information. This is because they don't utilize SEOs, search engine optimization. You can find them on your school website if your school has purchased them. Academic databases are popular amongst universities. Most of the academic databases are paid and you probably won't have everything you need. Academic searches are written by specialists. Many schools acknowledge academic databases because it provides serious information, as well as they don't utilize SEOs, which is search engine optimization. But because of this, the majority of academic databases cost money, and you might not get exactly what you want. Books contain information that is often written by qualified people who know what they're talking about. They are also checked by an editor to make sure everything they say is accurate. Books can also be a bit time-consuming, and they might be a bit outdated depending on what book you read. You can't go up to the book and press Ctrl F to find a specific key phrase or quote. Also, young people are growing more repellent toward books. After you have collected all of your data and close to completing it, you need to make sure you have a list of all your sources, preferably in a bibliographical format. APA is a citation format that is used in a lot of schools. You can find an APA citation tool online. It is crucial that you have listed all of your sources and information you have found online. This is because if you don't source it, your big D will shrivel into a fail. Many schools do not tolerate plagiarism and you could get expelled, so make sure you cite everything you found online and put it in your bibliography. Overall, if you follow these steps, you should get a distinction, provided you have done well in production and post-production.